over 5 counties in southern Maryland. There's also the Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware, which covers the entire Eastern Shore. The OAG was given an infusion of funds to complete the investigation into the misdeeds of the Catholic Church in both of those dioceses. They have staffed up and they're performing their job well. Nevertheless, we want to urge them to complete this work as quickly as possible, but yet thoroughly. And I understand that's walking a tightrope right there. It cannot be understated the impact that this report will have on survivors that have lived with guilt and shame for all of their lives, for decades. They've carried this burden around for a long, long time. When we finally get this report out, victims can finally release that burden of shame and guilt onto the place that it belongs, onto the predator, onto the people who protected that predator. That is the high-level Catholic Church. So it's very important for these people to see the report for those other 2 dioceses. This is why the report must be thorough. However, many survivors are in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. We're not going to live forever. I'm 7 years away from the age my father died. And so there is a need for expediency as well, so that survivors do not go to their death having never released that burden. Finally, the Catholic Church is fighting the constitutionality of the CVA, despite the fact that the Attorney General opined that this law is in fact constitutional. And again, we thank the AG for crafting a brilliant amicus brief for that Supreme Court in Maryland. And I'm going to turn the rest over to Teresa. Sorry.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Teresa Lancaster. Our Child Victims Act was passed because we worked long and hard to get it passed. It is a protection of young people, and it'll prevent abuse of children in the future. But our moment of truth is coming up on September 10, when the Supreme Court of Maryland is going to determine whether or not it is deemed constitutional. The Church is leading the charge and spending thousands of dollars to kill our bill. The Church centers its argument on a 2017 Maryland law that allowed survivors of child sex abuse to sue their abusers and the institutions that employed them until age 38. Church lobbyists snuck the statute of repose into the 2017 law, which grants defendants immunity from claims filed after a survivor turns 38. The records show there was no discussion of the statute of repose or its implication. It is a law designed for construction industry. It bars claims after a certain period following the completion of a building. The Church wants to use this obscure law to say they have vested rights that bars claims from children who were raped. Attorney General Brown's office wrote, "There is no basis to conclude that the General Assembly ever intended to create vested right for enablers of child sex abuse to avoid civil liability." The Archdiocese themselves fought to take away similar vested rights of the asbestos industry when they argued for 2 bills back in 1991. They wanted money back for cleaning of asbestos in their building. The General Assembly modified the statute of repose back then and passed the asbestos exception to protect public health. Likewise, the childhood sexual abuse epidemic is a public crisis that merits a modification of the statute of repose. The General Assembly has every right to pass the Child Victims Act. The lawmakers are the ultimate arbitrators of what public policy is in the state of Maryland, and they made their intent clear. The legislature's remedied a long-standing injustice. What could possibly be the purpose or the public benefit of creating extraordinary protection through the statute of repose to every organization that negligently failed to protect children from sexual abuse? Now, without any clear basis in constitutional text, the defendant asks the court to hold that the Maryland Constitution prevents the General Assembly from reviving the civil claims against enablers of child sex abuse. The General Assembly's intent behind our bill was to right a wrong. The Child Victims Act was a lawful and important exercise of the General Assembly's authority. It does not create a new cause of action. It does not lower the burden of proof needed to prove our case. It simply removes time barriers to allow victims to seek justice. The public interest is best served by allowing survivors to prove the harm imposed on them and by whom, and to seek compensation for that harm. Thank you.
Can you spell your name?
Teresa Lancaster. Spell it.
Yes.
Teresa Lancaster.
Teresa, this has been such a long fight for you. How important is it, and difficult but important, to keep speaking out and keep fighting survivors?
Well, it took 21 years to get the bill passed. I worked with Frank Dingle, who is going to be here today. It's very important. To me, it's my life's goal to protect children from the abuse that I suffered. And we can do that going forward. And the church, with one hand, says that they want to support us, and with the other hand, they want to take the law away. And they're not just taking it from the Catholics, they're taking it from other organizations, the Boy Scouts, Wexter Center, child juvenile centers. So it's across the board for people that were raped as children.
Do you guys have any kind of specific information as to where the AG's office is on their investigations in the other two dioceses?
Not at this time. We have a meeting with them scheduled next week.
Okay, but you all are satisfied with kind of how it's going so far?
Yep. We think they're
We'd
moving.
like it to be done now.
Yes.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. But they staffed up at the beginning of the year, and they've been going gangbusters. It's two dioceses. You know, it's all that stuff. I would hope that we could get it done within a year, but I don't know if that's possible.
Frank?
Hi, my name is Frank Schindler, Schindler. As Dave and Teresa said, we're here today, at least in part, to remind all Marylanders of the impact of the Attorney General's report on child sexual abuse in the Roman Catholic Church in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and also the impact of the Child Victims Act. The release of the report on child sexual abuse gave a voice to the survivors of these heinous crimes. It allowed them to be heard, and even more important, to be heard and to be believed. For too long, the Catholic Church and other institutions have refused the survivors their voice. They've refused to acknowledge them, and they certainly have refused to believe them. The report and the Child Victims Act have been a true catalyst for change for all victims of child sexual abuse. A change from the years of silence that so many survivors, not only survivors of abuse by the Catholic Church, but many other survivors of institutional and institutionalized physical and sexual abuse. It's helped show them that they no longer need to hide, no longer need to suffer in silence. As was said, the AG report and the Child Victims Act have helped bring to light physical and sexual abuse in institutions, including the Key School, the Waxter Center, the Charles Hickey School, the Montrose School, the Victor Cullen School, Cheltenham, the Western Maryland Children's Center, the Lower Eastern Shore Center, the Mormon Church, the Boy Scouts of America, the Greater Grace Outreach Church. Tragically, the list just goes on. We are certain that the completion of the AG reports on child sexual abuse in the Archdiocese of Washington and the Diocese of Wilmington will further advance the right of all survivors to be heard and to be believed. And these reports, as well as the courageous passage of the Child Victims Act, will continue to serve as a warning to Archbishop Laurie of Baltimore, to Archbishop Gregory of Washington, and to Bishop Koenig of Wilmington that they cannot continue to pretend to care about survivors while continuing to oppose their rights, violate their trust, and re-traumatize them. They're going to be reminded that the eyes of justice and accountability remain firmly fixed on their culpability and their hypocrisy. Thank you.
Jake, did you want to? We got one more, and then.
My name is David Chappelle. If you want me to spell that, Schappelle. I'm speaking to you as a survivor of child sexual abuse. I'm also speaking to you as a former congregant of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. I grew up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, in Montgomery County, which is one of the counties that is under the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. I want to also acknowledge and thank the Office of the Attorney General for the countless hours and the time and energy that's put into the reports so far on the Archdiocese of Baltimore. And I'm urging them to continue their work to finish the report on the Office of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. and the Archdiocese of Wilmington, Delaware. I'm speaking also as a survivor of abuse and somebody who did not recall my abuse until 2019, which is 5 years. I'm celebrating my anniversary of re-traumatize the pain and the anguish that it caused me and my family. And I want you to know that the issue of time limit is real. It is something that survivors feel. We believe that no one is pressured to come forward at any given time. They should have the right to come forward whenever they are comfortable, whenever they're capable, whenever they have the ability to, whenever that is. And I want to encourage the state and the legislators to do what's right and to think about the survivors and think about the society. One crime against one child is a crime against the entire society. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Anybody have any more questions?
We asked David, what would it mean to you to see these findings revealed, this investigation, since this does apply to Washington? What would it mean to you to see that happen?
Yeah, to see this through, it would mean to me personally, my case is against the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., as well as St. Luke's Institute, which is another point that this is an institute in Silver Spring. I'm not sure if they're still there in existence, but they were in business to treat priests who were identified and known by the Catholic Church as predators. They were sent to Silver Spring in an outpatient facility where they could come to my parish and abuse me. And that is exactly what happened. My abuser was institutionalized at St. Luke's Institute. So the truth will come out. That is my goal. That is why we're all here, is so that the truth can come out. Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing on it. I think it's, unless you've experienced it, I think it's almost impossible to put voice to the feeling someone gets when their predator's name is put on a piece of paper and they see it and it says, I was right. Even if they've never told anybody, they've been telling themselves for 20, 30, 40 years, did this really happen? Did this really happen? And that sense of validation you get to see that name in print saying, yes, he was what I thought he was. You can't describe it. It's indescribable. And it will release a lot of people from the agony that they have.
I will piggyback on that because in the report on the Archdiocese of Baltimore, my abuser was called out in a footnote. And so it brought a weird sense of joy and delight to see his name in a report so official. And that's weird to say, but the reality of it is it's hard to put into words, and everybody's going to have their own reaction. But for me, it was a little bit of a sense of relief and a sense of, aha, see, let's tell this story. There's more to tell.
The Archdiocese of Baltimore report was released. It had my abuser, Father Maskell, in there, and it proved that everything we said in the documentary, The Keepers, did in fact happen after the church said it was a bunch of lies. The papers proved it. We had evidence to prove it, so they couldn't lie anymore. Well, they do.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
If anybody wants to talk to anybody individually, feel free to.
You did great.
It's hard.